We're now going to talk about one of the most important religions in all of human history, today followed by over 2 billion people, and that's Christianity. And Christianity is based on the life and teachings of Jesus Christ. And the term Christ, he is given because he is viewed as the Savior for the Messiah, for the Jewish people originally, and then for all of mankind. The term Christ is the Greek term for Messiah. And he's not just followed by over 2 billion Christians. Over 1 billion Muslims also view him as a significant prophet of their faith. So let's just get a little bit of context on the life and the teachings of Jesus Christ. And regardless of whether you're Christian, you believe, you don't believe, this is very important for just understanding modern culture and history. And beyond just the followers it has today, it has a significant influence on the Roman Empire itself. So this is roughly the Roman Empire at the time of Jesus. And Jesus' life and teachings are right over here on the eastern shores of the Mediterranean, mostly in modern-day Israel and Palestine. And you might remember, right before or shortly before Jesus' birth, you have Augustus coming to the throne, emperor of the Roman Empire. And Jesus, who historians believe was born in someplace between 4 and 6 BCE, would have been born under Augustus's rule. And he dies in, depending on the view, sometime around 30, 31, 32, 33 CE. And of course our calendar, this whole, whether you want to go with the more secular version, BCE, before the Common Era, and CE Common Era, or before Christ, or AD, Anno Domini, it's really based on the birth of Jesus. Now we think Jesus was born slightly before the year 1. There actually isn't a year 0. Now, what we know about Jesus' life comes to us from the first 4 books, or most of what we know about Jesus' life comes to us from the first 4 books of the New Testament. The Gospel of Matthew, the Gospel of Mark, the Gospel of Luke, and the Gospel of John. Sometimes it's the Gospel according to Matthew, the Gospel according to Mark. Now, you might say, well, what does the word gospel mean? Well, today it generally refers to the life and the teaching of Jesus Christ, but it comes from Old English for good news. Let me write that down. Good news. And it actually, another term for good news is evangel. You might have heard words like evangelist or evangelical. And it's viewed good news because it's this message for the most part of love and peace and embracing others, and that the poor will be rewarded in the kingdom of heaven. And just to zoom in on where he was born and died and preached, this is a view of that region. Remember, this is just part of Rome at the time of his life. And he's born famously in Bethlehem. According to biblical accounts, his mother, it was a virgin birth. His father you could view as God or the Holy Spirit. And he is raised in Nazareth, why he is often called Jesus of Nazareth. And there's not a lot of detail on a lot of his early life, but as he gets into his late 20s or early 30s, that's where we hear a lot more from him in the Gospels. And in particular, the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, these are viewed as the synoptic Gospels because they have a lot in common. And you can see here when historians think they were written, the Gospel of Mark is believed to be written first, and it shares a lot with the Gospel of Matthew and also some with the Gospel of Luke. And so that's why these 3 are called synoptic Gospels, because they're really a bit of a synopsis of the same events of Jesus Christ. And so we have his birth. This is the famous scene here. I have a lot of neat paintings that show the life of Jesus because, as you can imagine, he's been a subject of many paintings. This is him as an infant being visited by the 3 magi, bringing him gifts. Magi famously are these Zoroastrian priests from Persia. But the real narrative of the New Testament, especially of the Gospels, the first 4 books, starts to kick in his older life. This is Jesus in his late 20s or early 30s. This is him getting baptized by John the Baptist, who was already being followed by many Jews in the area. He was baptized in the Jordan River. So the Jordan River this is the Jordan River right over here, and he was baptized by John the Baptist someplace in this region right over there. John the Baptist eventually gets killed by King Herod of Galilee, and then Jesus really goes full into his ministry. And most of his ministry occurs in this region, his home region around Galilee. But eventually, he makes his way down to Jerusalem. As he performs miracles, and he says his teachings, he gets more and more followers, more and more people who view him as the Messiah, who view him as Christ. But you can imagine while that is happening, he is not making many friends with the traditional religious establishment, especially folks like the Pharisees, which is a very traditionalist sect, who view him as a heretic, someone who's blaspheming, someone who's taking some of their authority, their power. Whether you think they thought he was just going against religious law or they were getting envious, they were really starting to want to get to him. And Jesus famously eventually goes to Jerusalem knowing that he is going to be killed there, essentially being accused by the religious traditionalists. And he views that as essentially part of the destiny, part of what needs to happen for the faith. But to understand his teachings better, and why you could have imagined it was viewed as good news by many Jews at the time, and eventually many people, even non-Jews, Gentiles in the Roman Empire, I have some of his quotes, or at least according to the Gospel of Matthew. And some of these first are from his famous Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Ye have heard it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you, resist not him that is evil. But whosoever smiteth thee on thy right cheek, turn to him the other also. Ye have heard that it was said, thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies and pray for them that persecute you. So these are, even in modern terms, these are pretty profound things to say. The blessed are the poor, the meek, they shall inherit the kingdom of heaven. This is why it was viewed by good news. Most of the people in the Roman Empire and in Judea and Galilee at this time were not rich. Even though this is a message that even if your life is hard right now, eventually you will be rewarded. It also is a message of peace, that look, don't seek revenge on people, and don't just like the people who are nice to you, but have love for everyone. He also liked to stick it a little bit to what he viewed as the hypocrites. And you could imagine this also, and it was aimed at a lot of the traditionalists, a lot of the traditionalist priests. And when ye pray, ye shall not be as the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and in the corners of the streets, that they may be seen of men. So he's saying, look, they want to pray just so that other people see them and they get credit for it. Verily I say unto you, they have received their reward. But thou, when thou prayest, enter into thine inner chamber, and having shut thy door, pray to thy Father who is in secret, and thy Father who seeth in secret shall recompense thee. So don't make a big show out of your prayer. Do it in privacy. It's between you and a personal connection that you have with God, which is also a pretty profound thing, especially in that time where there was much more pomp around and maybe a little bit less of a personal God. But it wasn't all kind of conciliatory. He told his disciples, his followers, that look, this is going to cause some tension here. This isn't going to be easy. This is one way to interpret this following passage from Matthew. Think not that I came to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. For I came to set a man at variance against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and a man's foes shall be they of his own household. So he's saying, look, this is going to cause serious division. So he's going around mainly in Galilee. He's performing these various miracles, bringing people to life, turning water into wine, walking on water, these various miracles. This is a famous transfiguration where he essentially becomes luminescent, and it becomes apparent to his followers that he is the Christ, the Son of God. And eventually, he decides to meet his fate. And once again, this is happening in 30 or 33 CE, which is the year that historians believe Jesus died. And this is a very important week in Christianity. This is considered Passion Week. And the term passion today has some modern connotations, but it's really referring to the suffering of Jesus, because this is going to be the week that Jesus is crucified, but then is resurrected and then ascends into heaven. that Sunday, today celebrated as Palm Sunday, is the day that Jesus comes to Jerusalem, knowing his fate, where he's greeted as by some as King of the Jews, where people throw palms at his footsteps. That same week, he goes into the main temple of Jerusalem. It's only going to be a few decades before that temple is destroyed by the Romans during the Jewish rebellion. And he goes in there and tells there's money changers there. He says, you guys are defiling the temple, and he cleanses the temple. Then later that week, on Thursday, he has his famous Last Supper. This is roughly during the time of Passover, although most historians don't view this as the Passover Seder or Seder. But this is the famous meal where he says, one of you is going to betray me, and it's Judas Iscariot who goes to the Sanhedrin, the Jewish authorities, and say, look, this guy that you guys really don't like, I can bring y'all to him, or I could bring him to you. And they pay him some silver to do so. And he does bring them to Jesus, or Jesus to them. And they have a trial where they accuse him of being a blasphemer, of going against the tradition of the Jewish faith. And Jesus is silent for the most part. And so then they view him as guilty. They bring him to the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate, and say, look, this guy has committed grievous sins. He's trying to raise an insurrection against Rome. And at least according to the books of the Bible, Pontius Pilate seems to somewhat reluctantly say, okay, he even offers to the Jewish people, hey, I'll pardon one of two people. Do you want me to pardon him? And they say, no. Well, you could argue the priests are saying, no, we don't want you to pardon him. And so he gets crucified by the Romans. This is on Friday, today commemorated by Christians as Good Friday. Then that Sunday, commemorated today by Christians, Easter Sunday, it is believed that he was resurrected. He rose back up as was prophesied. And then his followers see him ascend on to heaven. So all of these, I've glazed over a lot of important events. These are all central events to Christianity. And whether you believe or you don't believe, it's really valuable to understand a lot of our modern culture. Now, I'll leave you with a quote from a famous Christian historian, Dr. Bruce Shelley, which really points out one of the key distinctive features of Christianity. Christianity is the only major religion to have as its central event the humiliation of its God. And that, is something to think about. What was so powerful about this? Whether you believe, whether you're a Christian or you're not, there was something about the life of Jesus, the story of Jesus, that allowed it to be very powerful and spread through Rome, eventually becoming the central religion of the Roman Empire, and eventually becoming the largest religion in the world.